Hi guys, welcome to your channel Absolute Roadie. I'm Karan and you also know me as Prince. If you are someone who is looking to plan a long distance ride, an endurance ride, and is also looking forward to get it certified, then you are watching the right video. In this video, we will cover the process of organizing, planning, executing, and finally concluding the ride with a certification so that you can flaunt it, you can patch it on your vest, you can put a certificate in your home or on your wall of fame, wherever it is. All that can be done in an organized and a planned manner. Watch this video till the end. Watch every minute of it because every minute I'll be covering important details regarding endurance ride. So let's get started, guys. What are the rides we are talking about here? All the rides that you see in the title of this video. Let me start by naming them. Say Easy Rider, Full Throttle, King of the Road, Saddle Sore, Burn Burner Gold. These are all the rides which every motorcycle enthusiast who is a long distance rider look forward to complete and get it certified and enjoy the certificate and a patch lifelong. Now these are the rides on which I'm going to speak about, and I'm pretty confident that after watching this video almost all your questions and queries will be addressed. If not, you can still leave a comment and I'll be more than happy to revert back to you. And the reason I'm so confident about all these rides is all the rides that you see in the title of the video, I've done them all. And I've done all those rides. I have done it multiple times, and I've also helped my friends complete some of those rides as well. And that's the reason, I think this video will be of immense help to you. So let's start. So let me just arrange these rides in order of toughness. Yes, that's correct. All these rides are tough. So it's not that, any of these rides is easy. It's, requires a little more of you than an average motorcycle rider. If you have that extra X factor, then you are the one to do these rides. So let's arrange them in order of, from least tough to, the highest stuff. But these are tough. All of them are tough rides. So let me start. The first one I would say is the Easy Rider. The primary difference on rating comes on one common factor, which is the length of the ride, the distance. And that's a differentiating factor. Easy Rider, 805 kilometers, 12 hours time. Then we move on to Full Throttle, that's 1610 kilometers, and Saddle Sore, 1600 kilometers. Time, 24 hours. Moving forward, we will have King of the Road, 2415 kilometers, 2415 kilometers to be completed in 36 hours, or Burn Burner, which is 2500 plus kilometers in less than 24 hours. And the toughest one is the Burn Burner Gold, which is 2500 plus kilometers in less than 24 hours. Yes, you guys, you heard it correct. It's 2500 plus kilometers in less than 24 hours. You know why I tapped myself? Because I've done that ride. And just, taking a moment for this, because, the reason I'm also doing this video is because it's quite close to me. It's quite close to my heart, as for all of these rides, I had to, put in a lot of time and effort to do it. And especially the last one, Burn Burner Gold. Guys, I've done it. And I am also very proud to say that I am the first 5 in Middle East to complete the Burn Burner Gold in kilometers, which is 2500 plus kilometers in less than 24 hours. So first 5 in the sense that it's not that I was the 4th or the 5th or the first person to do it. First 5 in the sense that me and 4 of my brothers were the first 5 to do this ride together. It was me, it was my friend from India, Subir, my friend from Jordan, Wael, my friend from Lebanon, Jihad, my friend from Palestine, Ahmed. So we guys did this ride, and we are the first 5 in the Middle East to do a Burn Burner Gold in kilometers, which is 2500 plus kilometers in less than 24 hours. And that's the reason I say that with a lot of confidence, that after you watch this video, you would be far more confident, you would feel more organized and planned, or you would be able to organize and plan for all these rides with a lot of efficiency, and you should be able to execute them. So let's take a step back, before deep diving or directly, looking at all those points. The points which I'm going to speak about, it's not an exhaustive list. There would be a lot of other things depending on your own requirements, depending on your own riding pattern which you would like to add to it. But what I'm going to speak about is generic, and it would cover almost every one of you who is looking to do an endurance ride. So what's an endurance ride? I mean, that's the basic question which comes to your mind. Well, endurance ride in layman's term is a ride which has a specific distance to be covered in a specific time. That's the basic definition of an endurance ride. So you have a distance to cover and you also are time bound. So that's the reason it requires a little more alertness. It's not a leisure ride that you would go and come back in between, or you can leave it, or you can think about doing half the ride today, half the ride tomorrow. No, nothing like that. It's a ride which, it started at a specific time. It needs to end after completion of a limited time period which is allotted to you for that ride. So let's get started. Now, I'll take another moment to look back on the history of the associations which certify these rides, which is very critical. I mean, we all want the patches, we all want the certificate, but we also need to know who are those associations who are going to give those patches to us. Well, there are two associations from which I've got my patches. One is the Iron Butt Association, and the other one is the Long Distance Rider. Now, of the two, Iron Butt Association has a very rich history. It goes back to as late as 1982, and there are a lot of riders in the world who, have got certifications from the association. The association claims to have 75,000 plus membership. So it's all there on their website. Initially, until 1982, it was known as the Iron Butt Club. So it was like an MC, like a motorcycle club. And then in 1982, or, that's the time, don't catch me on ears again, guys. I mean, I've read about it earlier when I started to plan these rides, and I'm just recalling and, narrating the history before you. So around that time period, they converted themselves and started calling themselves as Iron Butt Association instead of Iron Butt Club. So then that's when it all started, and they started certifying other riders who used to, become member of that association by completing one of those rides. So you don't have to do all the rides or any specific number of rides to be a member of the association. You can choose to do any one ride. Now, where I'm currently located, which is UAE, and plus, my friends in the Indian subcontinent, we follow the kilometer, system of accounting for distances. So all these rides which I'm going to speak about are the kilometer rides. There are certain customized rides which are in miles, which can be done in United States only. There's nothing stopping you to travel to US and do that ride. If you get an opportunity, you should do that. We'll talk about those rides in detail later, but let me just, I was just trying to give you a, small background of, or the history of these associations. So Iron Butt Association is very well known among the, motorcycling fraternity. People have a lot of respect for it. Michael Kneebone is a very generous person, very kind-hearted, highly respected motorcyclist. And, it's once you do a ride and once you go through the certification process, you would really feel proud of yourself, and it's an amazing thing which Iron Butt Association has done. It's not just about you getting a certificate for a particular ride. It is about bringing the entire community together. Once you do a ride, you become a member. When you become a member, you also join the forums. And then when you look at the community, you feel so good about it. And it's all about, that's what I always say. At the end of the day, when you start riding, you will talk about the bike, then you will talk about the accessories, then you will talk about the rides, then you will talk about destination. And finally, at the end, when you mature as a rider, you'll talk about the community. So that's where it all takes you at the end of the day. Yes, at the back of it, you will be talking about motorcycle upgrading, accessories, parts, everything will happen. But the critical part, or the most important thing that will start impacting you after you mature as a rider, would be the community. So if you have not been through that phase, I mean, you will ultimately come to that level as well, as and when you go through all the phases of motorcycling. So, talking about these rides have to be organized and planned in a very phased manner. They are very important in terms of logistics, which you're going to, arrange for. But let me just, start with a distinction between the two groups, the two associations from which we'll get certification. Now, important point to remember is that you can do all the rides together and apply to both the associations individually. You don't have to do separate rides to get certification from each institute. You just need to do the ride, and you can reach out with your paperwork to both the associations and get yourself certified. In Aaron Butt Association, you reach out to a group common ID. You can, if you're lucky enough, you can get a chance to interact with Michael Kneebone as well. And long distance rider, you'll interact with someone by the name Jack Powis. He's also quite responsive, and he also expedites your certification process a lot. He makes a lot of effort in doing that. And now, having said that, let's look at the rides by the name and which rides belong to which association. So, your Saddle Soar, Burn Burner Gold, these belong to the Aaron Butt associations. Full Throttle, Easy Rider, King of the Road, these rides belong to long distance riders. Now, Aaron Butt Association, since I'm a member of the association, since mid 80s, I think by around 1985, 87 onwards, or even earlier, if you will go through their website, you will find a lot of material on the history. You should read it. So they are very sensitive about the trademarks, about the phrases, about the taglines which they have. For example, world's toughest motorcycle riders or world's toughest riders, Aaron Butt Association, Aaron Butt rides. And there's so many rides which they have. So these all phrases, or these all taglines have been trademarked, and that's the reason I have avoided to show graphic representations or cut, copy, paste a lot of stuff from their website and show it over here. Though I'm sure if I would have reached out to the Aaron Butt Association or reached out to Michael Kneebone, he is quite generous to or would have allowed someone to use it who wants to create a vlog and share information on it. But I haven't done that. It's quite difficult to reach out to him. He is quite busy, and to get hold of him on email and ask for permissions and get into the entire process, it's quite difficult. It's lengthy as well. I'm not sure. Maybe it might be just a click away, but I haven't done that. I just wanted to come out with this video, and I'm going to refrain from using any graphic representation from their websites or adding those taglines in my video title or anything. The only thing which I can use and show it to you guys are my certificates, which has the same patch, which will have the same logo and will have the same tagline. But that's my certificate, so I can show it to you. So that's the reason I'm just trying to stay away from it, and that's the reason I would also advise you guys as well to not just use it freely. It comes after a lot of effort, after a lot of planning, after a lot of hard riding. That's when you earn it. So no point getting it or capitalizing it without doing that right. Moving forward, now I've listed those rides which belong to both these associations. You can do a common ride and get yourself certified. Now let's look at a broader level distinction, which you should always keep in your mind before you decide to go ahead with the ride. I'll divide them in 3 points, and all of the points can be parked under these 3 top broad level headings. One is your mental fitness. Number 2 is physical fitness, and number 3 is the motorbike fitness. Now, by mental fitness, I am typically meaning your intentions, your readiness for the ride. It's not how strong your analytical skills are. That's a different thing. I'm not talking about your mental math or mental aptitude. That's totally different. By mental fitness, I mean is once you are committed, then you're all in. It's not that, unless you're a solo rider, that's a different thing, or you're doing a solo ride. Usually, these rides are planned by some people. They would like others to join as well, or it is done in a closed group with 4 or 5 friends or 6 or 7 friends. And, in that group, I know because I've done it, I've experienced it, there is someone or the other who is applying his or her brain behind the entire planning of the ride. So now what happens is, if it's a group of 5 or 6, that one person or 2 persons who are planning the ride have to take into consideration a lot of things which they do while planning the ride. So they will look at you, they will look at your motorbike, they will do a lot of things. A lot of things will be planned based on each and every individual who is a part of that group. So if you are not sure, and if you go with a mindset, oh, I'll go for the ride, let me see, let me test the waters, If I'm able to do it, I'll do it. If not, or I'll back off. I'll cut off. I'll give them a thumbs up and I'll move out of the tribe and I will come back home. I'm tired. I can't do it. I'm exhausted. I'm not able to do the ride. Please don't do that. Get into the ride only when you have made up your mind. Unless and until there is an unforeseen incident which happened during the ride, something went wrong with your bike, you can't ride it anymore, something happened, that's a different thing. But if nothing like that, then don't say yes. Do not confirm your name to that group until you are 100% sure you're mentally prepared for the ride. Because a lot of planning has happened. If one person moves out, the plan would have been totally different with the remaining people and they would have saved a lot of time. Or now because that one person is gone, others will end up following a very different plan which they are not, they would have been much happier with a different plan or a different route altogether. So we will get into the details, but that's number one point about your mental fitness. Number two, physical fitness. Again, don't take me in literal terms. Physical fitness is not your, your stamina about running for 100 kilometers, 50 kilometers, 20 kilometers, or 10 kilometers, or how much gym do you, time you spend in your gym. Physical fitness, by physical fitness, I means your ability to remain active, responsive during the entire tenor of the ride. Your reflex system takes a toll if you ride for long. So if you're riding in the first hour, second hour, third hour, your reflex systems are pretty strong. By reflex system, I mean your response to the traffic around you, to things happening around you. You see a moving object, you react to it. You apply brake, you change lane, you do something or the other. So your reflex system during the early hours of riding are pretty active. You need to ask yourself, you need to test yourself, are your reflex system equally strong at the end of 10 hours, 12 hours, 15 hours, 24 hours, 36 hours? So like I said, by physical fitness, I meant your ability to ride a motorcycle with the same reflexes, the same response time to this, to these surroundings around you at the first hour of the ride versus the last hour of the ride. If you think you have it, yes, definitely there might be a drop. It's quite obvious. You would get tired after 10 hours or 15 hours or 36 hours of ride. But, you have the option to take, small breaks, rest yourself, give your body a rest, but make sure that you are, I would use the term, you're alive. You're there, you're right there. You're totally into it. You understand, you have a total focus on your machine and on the traffic and on the surroundings around you. You also have a sense of your tribe. So you don't become a group rider to a solo rider by the end of the day. You still remain and you all work as a group. So we'll talk about, selection of the group as well. That's also a very critical point, but that's about physical fitness. And the third is the fitness of your motorcycle. So that's again a very important thing. Your motorcycle has to be regularly serviced. You don't have to follow a special schedule for it. It just needs to go through the regular service. It had been serviced regularly, and it is in fit and proper condition. As long as you are following that schedule with your bike, it's been regularly maintained, you don't have to worry about anything. So these are the top 3 points which I consider as, a broad level point. All other points will fall into it. All of the points are correlated, they're interdependent on each other. So it's like a vicious circle. You cannot do one thing or leave the other. They're all dependent on one another. It all gets interconnected. Then if you're riding as a group, then it all gets interconnected to all the riders in the group. And that's why I said initially, one, don't back off. That's your mental fitness. So if you're prepared, you're all in, you're all committed. Physical fitness. You are a strong rider. You're a physically active person. You have confidence and trust on your reflex system. That's what you need to check. And your motorcycle is fit, it's regularly serviced, then that's it. If you think you tick all these 3 boxes, then you can definitely opt for a ride, start planning on it, and execute it. But now let's deep dive. These are 3 broader or the top end points. Now we need to get into the nitty-gritties of it. So it's not as simple, it's not as complex, because I have planned my own rides, I have planned rides for other. Therefore, I know that it's difficult, it's not easy, it's very critical. There are a lot of things which are variables in it. There are no static options. There are all factors are variable. So you need to take into account everything when you're planning such a ride. So let's deep dive. The first point which you need to take, what do? You have thought that you want to do a ride. You think about all those points, you're mentally fit, you're physically fit, your bike is in a perfect condition. So now what? Now you need to get onto the table and plan for the ride. And what do you do when you plan for the ride? What's the first step that you will take? First step is the route planning. That's correct, if you have guessed it. So you need to plan the route, and the route planning is very critical since it will take into account almost every other variable factor as well. So when you're planning the route, if you're a solo rider, you're talking about yourself, your bike. But if you're planning the ride in a group, then you have to look at every rider, you have to look at every bike which you have. And for the simple reason, the most common thing you have to look at every bike, because every bike would have a different mileage. A Sportster would have a different mileage than a Road Glide, or a Honda Goldwing would have a different mileage than a Street Glide. So if you have multi-brand bikes, different bikes, you do not have the same bikes. Even for the same bike, one may be a stage 1, other may be a stage 4, and the mileage of the bike would vary a lot. So again, it's not just about having similar bikes, it's also about the specifications of each bike. So you need to reach out to everyone. You need to, it would be very good that if you know your riding buddies, if you know them very well, if you've ridden with them for long, then that's very good. Then you need to ask them about their bikes, what type of bike they have, what's the mileage. That's the most common thing, because when you plan the route, you need to plan the stops, and you need to be very smart and clever in planning the stops. Definitely, you have to plan your stop to top of your bikes. So you need to look at that. If your bike does 250 kilometers in a full tank, you should ideally have a stop at every 200 kilometers. You need to have an extra, oil for going around 50 kilometers, because you never know what happens between that 250 kilometers. You might have to go back and forth. You might, end up taking a long route. You have to detour and come back, in which you end up burning fuel worth 50 kilometers. So always have a stop, manage your stop, which is at least 50 kilometers before you, dry up your tank. Do not plan stops at, exactly at the point where you think your gas tank will go dry. So always keep that in mind. Things happen in a ride. You may have a proper map, you may have been on the same route, but you didn't realize either you, all of them, or just one person ends up missing the exit. And that person now has to go and take a big detour and come back. So you need to take in account of all those things. That's one, important thing to look at when you are route planning. So we start with number 1, which is looking at the riders and their motorbikes and the mileage which you extract out of it. That's key in planning a route, because you have to plan stops. Number 2, you won't be just, if it's say an easy ride, what do you call as an easy rider, a 12-hour ride, 805 kilometers, I can still imagine, depending on your group, you can survive for those 12 hours. You can just manage with some, drinks and chocolates at gas stations and move on, or just stop it at a small shop, or just stop it on the way, buy some fruits in case if you have, such option to pick up, or you carry your own food stuff with you. Just stop, take a, open up your saddle, take something out, and move on. So that's a different thing. But rides beyond that, like Saddle Sore or King of the Road, you need to plan your breaks, which includes stop up and food. Now, again, you need to look at the map. You need to look at the route. Suppose I'm looking at the route in UAE. Now, each and every gas station, barring a very few of them, which are located far off, not in, on the main highways or in the main city, every gas station also has, a store, a kind of not a grocery store, I would say, but you will have a store which will serve you coffee. You will have a store which will have some eateries, some milk, some, biscuits to pick up on, some bread to pick up on. There are some stores which even offer, a kind of mini restaurants. You will have McDonald's, you will have Subways, you will have some of the other shop as those gas stations. So you can easily club your break, where you top up and you eat something. Now, not all gas stations will you stop to eat. Certain gas stations will be only to top up and keep moving. So if you're, say, a tribe of 5, all of you can wait and move on together, because you will at least have 4 or 5 points on a gas station or more. But if you're a longer tribe, if you're 10 riders or if you're 15 riders, then yes, another thing to look at is break the groups. do not ride in bunches of 10 or 20 together. Break them into 5, break them into 6 or 7, and divide your group. And let each group leave with a gap of at least 10 to 15 minutes. So don't leave together, though you're in group, but don't leave together. Otherwise, again, you will all mix up. You need to have a certain gap between each group. So once the group is planned, you leave in a group of 4 or 5 or 7, depending on what the strength of the tribe is. You do that. If you have an eatery at a gas station, plan your stop so that you eat over there. And I'm telling you for a reason, because every minute counts. Once you take out your gear and you're eating, so you can save time. If you go to a gas station, you top it up, then you don't take out your gear, don't take out your helmet, just sit on your bike, top it up and move on. But if you have a gas station where you're tired, you want to take a break, you want to rest, then make sure that you choose the gas station where there is a restaurant, if possible, so that you can save a lot of time, because you will nearly spend at least 5 to 7 minutes in gearing up back, which is very critical. So you can save those times. And it's not that one break, you will have multiple breaks across different gas stations. So if you count 5 minutes each at 10 gas stations, it's 50 minutes, which is nearly an hour. So that's the amount of time which you're saving, or that's the amount of time you will add to your riding, instead of just spending and changing gear. So be wise in selecting your gas station breaks. Be wise in making your breaks for having some food. Try to club them with gas station. Try to split your breaks. First initial breaks, have only top up and move on. You can always carry water or some juices with you, or some sugar, some sugar syrups with you, which you can have in between while you're riding. You can always opt for a modular helmet while you're on those longer rides, so that you can just flip it open, have a sip and move on, or just munch something and move on. These are some critical things that you need to keep in mind. If you have a full face helmet and it's locked, you cannot keep on adding stuff from the visor. That will block your vision, and it will also throw a lot of air in your face. So these are the things that you need to keep in mind. Be smart about it. If you already have a modular helmet, it's good. No need to buy a new one. I mean, you can still manage, but if you can buy a modular helmet for these long distance rides, then that's the perfect thing to have, because that will help you a lot. You will save a lot of time. You can do a lot of things while you're riding itself, especially with bikes like Harley Davidson. Now, once you have done that, club your long breaks where you take rest, where you top up, and where you eat, so that you don't waste time in changing your gears. So that's done. Now, again, when you plan a break, initial breaks should be only for topping up, because you're fresh, you're not tired, you can ride for 6, 8, 10 hours continuously. And if you are taking a break only for topping it up, it would be hardly a 10-minute break. Now, you have to also remember the way the paperwork works for the long distance riders. You need to evidence. So how do you evidence? When you start your ride, you will have a form. You will fill that form, the start form, and there is an end form. When you fill the start form, you will note down the mileage in your bike, and you will get it signed from a witness. So ideally, I would say just get it signed from a gas station attendant. That's more than enough. And you can have his contact details mentioned. If somebody needs to verify, they can call and ask, and definitely that person would remember that you have asked him to sign at the mileage. The other option is that when you meet at the meetup point, when you're going to start the ride, just remember one thing. We always have a habit of reaching the gas station. What we do is, first we top up the bike, then we go and park it, then we do a meet and greet, hugging, kissing, and handshakes and talking and jokes, all that happen, a cigarette break, a coffee, and then we all move on. Don't do this mistake in long distance ride. It's not a leisure ride. As I've said a number of times, it's not for leisure. It's an endurance ride, which is time bound. So do exactly opposite. Go park your bike, meet everyone, shake hands with them, greet everyone. You want to have a coffee before you ride, have a coffee. Though I don't recommend people having coffees on ride. You can manage without it. No need to have a coffee or anything. You can just have a simple juice or water, or just before you leave, just have some food from home and carry some food. Avoid coffee as much as you can. Avoid Cokes or other soft drinks like that. Don't try and keep yourself awake by that. But still, I mean, you can, if you are someone who is into having a a cigarette or a smoke before you start riding, then fine. Park your bike, meet everyone, say hello, good morning, good evening, whatever time you have chosen to start your ride. That's also critical. I'll come back to it later. Do that, do all the hugging and kissing, and then when everyone says, okay, now let's gear up and go ride, that's the time you gear up, you do a briefing, or if someone else has planned the ride for the entire group, and let that person do the briefing. Tell them, brief them on how you want to ride. That's the initial route. That's what we're going to do for the next 2 or 3 hours. That's the place we're going to have a, first gas station break. So keep mentally prepare everyone on what's going to happen. You can even have a couple of catch-up sessions before you start the ride. Every evening, just, 1 or 2 evenings, just catch up, plan, synchronize, explain the route to everyone, and, let them know that how the ride will proceed for the first 5 hours, then the next 5 hours, then next 5 hours. So you need to have that kind of communication. I believe if you're having a group, you would have chosen the group wisely, and you are quite, comfortable in communicating with each other. So once that's done, when you are all ready, that's the time when you're all geared up, you take your bike and top it up. And I'm saying you because when you top it up, at the same time you have your form ready, which you'll ask the gas attendant to sign. Try to pay by cards. What happens when you pay by a card is on the receipt, they can capture your number plate and your mileage as well. So your mileage will be entered on your receipt. Your number plate will be entered on your receipt. What we'll do, you will take the receipt, light up your odometer and click a picture. So the mileage of the receipt and the mileage of your odometer matches, which means that that's the initial mileage of your bike. Suppose it's 50,000 kilometers. So you are, starting your ride at 50,000 kilometers, and whatever the next ride is for, say, 1,000 miles or 800 kilometers, it will reflect accordingly. So that's your evidence number 1. Evidence number 2 is your starting form, which has been signed by a gas station attendant who is an independent witness that you are starting your ride. You do that at the end because immediately when you top it up, you click that picture. That's the time which is there on the receipt, which becomes your starting time. If you do, if you change the cycle, if you get the form signed first, if you, top up your bike, then that is what your evidence. You may start your ride after 15-20 minutes. So you are going to lose those 15-20 minutes. So be smart, capitalize on those minutes, top it up at the last point when you are about to leave, and you'll get a gas station receipt. Click a picture with your odometer and you're done. That's your starting point. That's how you start. Now, again, I mentioned about selecting the group. That's also critical. If you do not know someone, if a stranger wants to join you for a ride, just do a background check. Please ask that person to come up with some references. Don't feel shy about it. There's nothing wrong in it. At the end of the day, it is an endurance ride. You have to be very critical about it. It's also a question of your safety. Because if someone is not riding safe, if someone has a different pattern of riding, if someone doesn't listen to you, then that's not going to go well in the ride. And you have to stick around with that person for almost 12 hours or 20 hours or 36 hours. So take care of that. So when you select your group, be very, very critical about the riders that are in your group. You need to have a group where, everyone listens to each other. There is a lot of planning. You catch up before the ride, you plan it. It's a cohesive planning. It's a synchronized group. You guys understand each other. You're very familiar with your riding pattern. You know what's happening. You understand body language. You understand body signals. You can have your own. We know, for example, in my group, I know a couple of riders who, the moment they start feeling tired, they stand up on their bike. So that's the first signal for me to know, oh, this guy stood up, which means probably I need to take a break and give these guys a rest. So, these are the kind of things which you need to know about your group. You need to be totally comfortable with them. If a new rider wants to join, then ideally avoid it. There is no harm in saying no. Or if you're happy to have them, if it's an open ride, you've organized it for a larger group, 10, 15, 20, 30, 40, 50 riders, then you need to make sure that that person, knows people around, gets some references, or has his or her riding partners as a part of the long distance riding group. and then you allow that person. Because like I said in the initial part of my video, if that one person decides to back off in the middle of ride, then entire planning which you have done, then it would have been different had that person not joined. So the people who are behind the ride, planning, selecting stops, making plans based on your bike, based on your riding pattern. So there are a lot of customization which happens. And if that person who you are not sure of having in the group, you might as well avoid it. So like I said, select your group, manage the selection process very wisely. Not all friends are good riders. Not all friends are made to do long distance ride. So no harm. Be open to them. Let them know that you need to do some more rides, come up to that level, and then be a part of this long distance ride. So that's right. And that's actually for the safety of that rider and also for the safety of the group. So be open and fair about it. Moving next, once you have planned the route, once you have selected the stops, you also need to deep dive into the route. I would suggest to look at some 3D maps, look at the entire route. It will take a lot of time. It will take, maybe you have to give, depending on how long the ride is, you might have end up giving 1 or 2 hours daily for almost 4 or 5 days before the actual ride. When you're planning the route, just have a look at a Google map for the entire route and see how many lanes do you see. Is it a 2-lane or 3-lane highway? Is it where are the spots where it narrows down to 1 lane, single lane? Look at the distance so you can see if the highway ends or if there is a massive construction one going on in a highway, and for 50 kilometers stretch, the highway is going to be 1 lane with 1 vehicle passing at a time, and if it's struck in front of you, there won't be enough space for you to take over it. Then you guys are stuck. So you need to accommodate. Either you avoid that route, you avoid that particular section of the route, you take a detour before that and come back on the main road, or else you need to accommodate for the time which you think your average speed would come down from 100 kilometers an hour to 50 kilometers an hour on that road. So you need to take into account. So you need to go granular, make those calculations before you do that. At the same time, when you are planning your route, try to map it out. Try to mark spots for where you're going to take a break. We are going to take break for eating. We are going to just take a 5-minute snap break or a 10-minute break to stretch your backs. It's not a top-up break. It's not an eating break. It could be just a break to rest or relax, because that's the spot where you ride the longest. You are riding for almost 200 kilometers non-stop without any break. So you might need a 5-minute break to relax your back or things. So there are a lot of things depending on who the riders are. What's their riding pattern, how comfortable they are. So you will have riders, who can ride for 25, 30, 36 hours non-stop. But at the same time, they need to stretch their back every 2 hours. They need to stretch, their legs every 2 to 3 hours. So speak to them, try to understand their riding pattern, try to understand their bikes, how much distance they will travel, plan your stops accordingly. Once the route is finalized, the best thing is to reach out to Michael Kneebone and or his team in Ironbird Association, or reach out to Jack Powys. Share your map, get it pre-approved. You can do that. You can reach out to them, let them know your maps. We do that especially in this part of the world because UAE is not a very big country. You ride for 2 to 3 hours, you will reach the Oman border. You ride 2 to 3 hours, in fact for 4 hours, and you will reach the Saudi border, and that's it. The country ends. It's and on the other side, it's the Gulf. So when you are in a place where you are stuck, so you need to manage your maps. You need to manage your route. Because you cannot go, to point A to B and come back and do B to A and A to B again 10 times and, ride 250 kilometers and say, I've done 2,500 kilometers. That's not allowed. You cannot keep riding the same road again and again multiple times and, say, oh, I've done 2,500 kilometers. I want my burn patch. I'm king of the road now. No, that's not how you become a king of the road. You need to plan your map on different roads. Now, we have done that in UAE. I've done that in UAE. And given the current restrictions, so I'm not sure how easy it is to travel interstate at this point in time. But the reason I came up with this video now is because it's one of the best times in the Indian subcontinent to do these kinds of long distance ride. Summer's gone, monsoon is gone, winters has yet not set in. It's autumn. It's a very nice season for you to get onto your bikes and do those long distance ride. But in Indian subcontinent, we also have very large states like say for example Maharashtra, or for that matter Andhra Pradesh, where the roads are amazing, and you can easily do a route like an Easy Rider, or for example a Saddle Soar, a full throttle, 1600 kilometers in 24 hours. Those are the routes which you can easily plan even now, and if you're looking to do that, that's a very appropriate time to do that. Now, given that you will have those restrictions when you plan your map, when you want to make a turn, when you want to make a turn, whether it's a 90-degree left or a right, or you want to make a U-turn from some point, try and do that at a gas station, a stop where you can get it witnessed. So what happens is, when you the way you start from the starting point, you don't have to get it signed at each point. You won't do that. But what will you do is, when you take the gas receipt, you will keep on clicking pictures. So mark that as a point, from where you change direction. That's very critical. So once you do that, what happens is, it will help, the teams in Iron Butt Association and the team in Long Distance Rider to know that from this is the point where you change direction. So that's important. Otherwise, if you are at point A on the left side and then your next stop is at point B, which is exactly opposite, then it will be very difficult for them to understand where did you went between those 2 points. So every point where you change direction, mark it as a stop, and you can easily evidence it with your gas receipt and with your odometer reading. So that's the point where you stop, that's the point where you made a turn, and this is the evidence for it. So these are things which you need to keep in mind while plotting those stops on your map. Again, it all goes back to route planning. So when you're planning a route, and if you're making a turn, see a gas station or maybe a restaurant near about it, so where you can eat, and you will have a invoice to evidence as a proof that you stop there, and that's the point where you change direction. So do that. It will help a lot. So guys, once you're done with marking the turning points in your map and evidencing them out, I think that should help a lot to the auditor, or the team that reviews your paperwork for the ride, as they now have a clear indicator from where you turned with evidence. So please make sure you do that, and that's the reason I say reach out to them, get your map pre-approved in case you're riding in a restricted geography where you cannot select long roads, interstate, or cannot end up going into different states, given there might be restrictions at this point in time. But you can still manage quite conveniently if you plan it out and if you get in pre-approval, so that will not become a hassle at a later stage. Nobody wants to be in a situation where you do the ride and then it gets rejected. Now, having said that, always try and get your, not required, it's not mandatory, but it would be good if you can get your route map pre-approved. Just send it to them. Send it to Iron Butt Association, mark it to Michael Kneebone if possible, especially if you are in a very different country, and if you are a new rider, if you reach out to them, they are of great help and they will look into it. Now, my process took 6 months to get it approved, and I was lucky enough to have a limited interaction with Michael Kneebone himself, where we exchanged emails, and I took him through the entire map, and he plotted each and every point which I have mentioned and match it back with the gas station receipt. So that was all done, and that's the reason there is a lot of respect and prestige value. That's the reason Iron Butt Association has such a huge brand name, because not everyone gets this certificate. It's reviewed thoroughly. Each and every point is being backed in their own maps, and they test it out with the evidence which you share with them. Moving next, so you started with your start point where you had taken a signature of the witness along with the gas station receipt, click the picture. You will repeat the later part of the process at almost every gas station, or if your break involves only stopping at a restaurant or a eating joint, and you again have a receipt. So keep taking those pictures along with the odometer reading, and it would become as an evidence plotted in your map. And if possible, try to get a pre-approval of the route. And when you reach the last stop, again, get the receipt and get the signature of the witness, most likely the gas station attendant. So that will close the entire loop. Now, again, few things which you can take care of, or you can keep that in your mind is, there are certain apps available which you can use, and you can go live with those apps while you're riding. So what will happen is, suppose I am referring to an app, say for example, Relive. If you use the app Relive, R-E-L-I-V-E, what it does, it keeps on creating a 3D map while you're riding. And, if every time when you stop, you can take a picture, it will add that picture to that point where you stop. So your entire route will get mapped. It will also record the entire time. It's on. You can see where you have stopped. You'll put a picture. Do not turn off your mobile. Keep it on charge all the time. Keep the app running at the background. Even if you're waiting, even if you're resting, even if you've taken a small break, the app is running and it will keep recording the time. So it will start from your 0 hours, and it will record the entire time. It will map the entire distance. It will show the map in 3D. So you will have a very strong evidence backing it up. There are other apps as well which you can use to plot your map on it and share it with the team and get it pre-approved. That will help you a lot. It will ease up your paperwork, because there might be situations, there might be cases where you may end up losing a receipt. So you have a receipt of A, you have a receipt of point C, but you are missing the receipt of point B. So, it will become, based on the references, you can claim that you stopped at B, but why do you want to be in that situation? Save the receipts, and that's the reason we also take pictures, not just to evidence with the odometer, but your picture evidence will also matter a lot because it's there. So you can attach the soft copies and send it, in an email to the Iron Butt Association generic ID and to the Long Distance Rider generic ID. And they would go through it, they would evidence it back and proceed with your certification. So once this entire process is done, where you have started your ride, you have taken gas receipts or restaurant receipts, you have taken evidence, you have added it, signed at the starting point, signed at the end point. Once it's all done, compile it in a nice email, add the attachments in order of the receipt, map the attachments, label the attachment as stop number 1, stop number 2, stop number 3, and similarly on your map as well, label them same, stop number 1, stop number 2. So when somebody has to refer it, it will become very easy. It will become a very quick process. Stop number 1 receipt, and you have evidence of it. It can be matched, odometer reading, gas station receipt. So it becomes quite easy. Now, what happens is that there are hundreds and thousands of riders who are looking forward to complete these endurance ride, and that's the reason when they do it, they apply. So there is a lot of backlog by the time your case would reach a volunteer or someone who is going to pick up and go through your ride. There is one way to counter that. Once you do your ride, once you submit your application, might as well become a premium member. For Iron Butt Association, the fees is $40. If I'm not wrong, I hope it's not increased, but that was the last fee which I paid. But unfortunately, I did not pay the premium membership when I was getting certified. But I advised all my other riding buddies to do it. Once you pay that fee, you jump the queue. So that's the benefit. Your application goes to a volunteer or an auditor to look at, to review. So your response time reduces a lot. My response time was almost 6 months. It took them 6 months for someone to get hold of my application and then reach back to me. A lot of email exchange to understand what the map is. That was my first ride, which I did. But finally, because I had a lot of evidence available to back every stop, a lot of pictures of each and every stop which I took. I also took selfies and, at every point where I was there, and a lot of evidence backing it up. So it made life easy, but my turn came after almost 6 months. So that's a long waiting period, and I can understand very well when you have done such a tough ride, which is, 1,000-kilometer long or a 2,500-kilometer long. You are eager to get yourself certified and get your patches on, and you really feel proud to flaunt your patches. So what patches? Can probably show them to you right now, and we can take a little more tour of my vest in detail length. But just to show it to you now, these are the patches which you will get. So starting from here, this is the burn burner. The center one is the burn burner gold. So that's burn burner gold is something which I'm really proud of, because that's the ride where you complete 2,500 plus kilometers in less than 24 hours. Similarly, you will have patches from long distance riders as well. Here are the patches: long distance riders, life member, full throttle patch over here. This is the full throttle patch. I know it will be difficult for you to have a look at them now, but I'll share my pictures separately when I share the video with you. And then you have your Iron Butt patches like this. This is Iron Butt Association, milliliter patch. So I have the certificates with me, and I have the patches, and the patches are on my vest, and I wear this vest, vest every time when I'm riding my bike. The certificates have been framed, and they are on one of the walls in my home, and I call it the Wall of Fame. That's the Wall of Fame of a motorbiker, and you really feel proud about it, because these rides are tough. They really test your patience. You need to be fit, like I said. You need to have strong reflexes. You need to be fit in the first hour of riding. You need to be fit in the last hour of riding, and accordingly you can plan. When I was doing my King of the Road, which is 24-15 kilometers in 36 hours, so what I did, and then instead of just planning for 24-15 kilometers, I planned my ride for 2,500 plus kilometers, because the distance for Iron Butt Association is higher. So plan higher. At the same time, one critical point: don't just do exact 25 kilometers as per odometer. But there is there is an error in odometer as well. Map your route and calculate the distance looking at the GPS coordinates, and you can do that in Google as well, or in all other apps as well which you're using, which provides you this option. And at the same time, always keep a margin for doing 50 kilometers extra, just in case, to be on a safer side. Your calculation as per odometer reading might differ if you look at the actual distance traveled when you're mapping the coordinates where you have marked your spot. So for them, they would go by the coordinates. So they will look at the GPS coordinates, they will look at the distance, and then that's the distance which you have. So it might be less than what your odometer says. So always keep a margin of 50 plus kilometers. So we did 2,587 kilometers in 23 hours and some 37 minutes for the Burn Burner Gold, which is a very testing ride. But you need to have that margin, because you are riding for 24 hours. You are every minute counts. You're taking 2.5 minutes break, and you're again riding back, and you don't want to called out for not traveling the entire distance for the period allotted. So you need to make sure that you ride a little bit extra. Burn Burner Gold is the real challenge, which is completing the same distance in 24 hours. So ideally you're riding 100 kilometers every hour, but that only makes it 2,400. You need to ride 2,500 plus kilometers. So you need to add 10 more kilometers. So riding 110 kilometers an hour. But is that's what you're looking at to reach out to 2,500 kilometers. So just start with the basics. Look at your map, look at your machine, look at your group you're riding with, and just plan the stops. Just take into account. I am an old school thought person. I map every route, not just in the app, which I also do, but at the same time I note it down. Anything could go wrong. My phone may just stop working in between. It's connected to a charger. It's connected to a backup batteries, but some wiring is loose. It's not charging. Mobile has gone off. I can't see the map. So I have printed maps as well with me. I carry those printed maps just in case there is a problem. You can easily read, and you'll come to know. You have your distances also marked next to it. So I have my stop name. I have the distance that I have traveled. I have the turn marked next to it. So if my map, if my a phone stops working in between, or something goes wrong with, connection. There's no network in certain locations, and Google is not working. So have it on offline map as well. But if something goes wrong for some unforeseen reason, you have them in papers as well, so you can see, oh, I've done 50 kilometers. After 50 kilometers, I have to travel another 50 kilometers for a gas station. But after 50 kilometers, there's a right turn. So have it, just note it down. And you have to go granular when you're planning for such long rides. What more, guys? We have spoken about the route mapping. We have spoken about the mapping of the stops, about how to take gas receipts, about the paperwork, about marking spots, especially at turning locations, evidencing them, and completing the paperwork, asking for a premium membership so as to expedite your certification process, trying to get a pre-approval using of apps where you can map and relay, play back the entire route so it can be evidenced easily. That's all what needs to be done. And other than that, you just need to fill your gas tank and ride. That's it. That's the only thing that you have to do. Now, again, some criticalities. Riding long distances would mean you are changing geographies. You are getting into zones which will have different climate, different environment. So you need to prepare for what? Correct? You need to prepare your gear accordingly. So if you know it might rain, or it's, temperatures may fall, I have to ride for, 36 hours, which means I would be riding in the night as well. You need to see which zone you are in, what's the climate, what's the weather over there. Would you need a jacket? Would it rain? Would you need a rain gear? What would you do? So you can make a small bag where you have all these toiletries with you. So have a lot of wet pipes, have a lot of carry a couple of pair of socks so you can change it after every 8 to 10 hours. If it's a 36-hour ride or 24 hours ride, you can change it multiple times. Carry a couple of t-shirts so that you can change it. Carry a couple of napkins so you can keep taking the sweat off whenever you take your long breaks for food. So do that. If possible, you can also carry when I did my solo ride, there was no point for me to wait at the gas station. I thought it's me alone. There's nobody to talk to. So what will I do? So I carried a couple of thermos with me, and what I did was, when I took my first break, I bought 2 coffees and added to the thermos itself. So the next time, I didn't have to stop, or I didn't have to park my bike, or take off my helmet and jacket, and then go to inside the store, buy a coffee, come back, stand in the queue. So you will save a lot of time if it's a ride like King of the Road, or Burn Burner, or Burn Burner Gold. So I carried my hot tea or coffee with me, though like I said initially, I don't prefer people having coffee, but I ended up having it. That's an honest confession, but I did that and I had it. So I need to, because I don't like to eat anything when I'm on a long distance ride, not even chocolates or any food. So the only thing that goes into my stomach, is usually a couple of biscuits and coffee. So coffee is, I'm not having coffee in the sense that this coffee is going to keep me awake. I'm someone who can stay awake for 48 hours and 50 hours and 60 hours non-stop. I can stay awake for 3 days and nothing will happen to me, and I will still have the same reflection. That's the way I'm built. I can't help it. But the coffee is only meant to, it's like, filling my stomach. That's it. So I had carried it with me, and, I save time by not, standing in queue or waiting for it to be served to me. Carry some paper cups, and you can easily have it, and you have a modular helmet to support yourself, not to take out your entire gear and save a lot of time, because that what saves a lot of time. Taking out the entire gear, or going inside a restaurant, ordering, waiting for it to come. You might as well carry some food items with you. In fact, even for a ride as long as 36 hours, you can carry some snacks. Just pick it up from your home. So you're at, for most of the time when you're stopping, you can quickly munch them and move on. You don't have to wait for it to be served. You don't have to stand in queue. You don't have to wait for the payment to be made. So these all things don't understand would take a lot of time. And if you have 2 or 3 such breaks, and if each of these activities take 10 minutes or more, then your half an hour is gone. And for a ride where you have to ride 2,500 kilometers in 24 hours, then you cannot, take the liberty of spending 30 minutes in these administrative works. So you have to be very careful about it. Looking at the three broader points which I mentioned initially, which is mental fitness, physical fitness, and bike fitness, I think we have covered nearly everything for mental fitness and physical fitness. What you can do additionally is, if in case, it's quite obvious, I have not come across any rider who didn't feel, or she didn't feel tired up, after doing these kind of long distance rides. You might as well carry, some painkillers with you, which will help you, get over that pain. Otherwise, there's no point riding with your back paining, or riding with a pain in your knee or shoulder or your neck for the remaining part of the ride. It's quite natural you'll have some pain in back, but as long as you keep stretching your back during your break, so just don't be stationary when you take a break. Just don't keep sitting on your bike while you're topping up the gas, or if you have gas attendants who are topping up the gas in your bikes, then just capitalize on the time. The bike will take at least 2 or 3 minutes to top up. Do stretch your backs during that time. Or even otherwise, when you're topped up, just take your bike, just wait for 30-40 seconds, stretch your back, do some exercise. Your muscles need to expand and contract. If you keep sitting in the same position for long, then there will obviously be pain. So if you're stretching, you can even stretch while you're riding. If you have highway pegs, it's good. If not, you can, opt for it. It's not that you cannot ride without those highway pegs, but that will help, you stretch your legs. Or even otherwise, just pick up your leg, try to rotate it, 4-5 times every 30-40 minutes, so that there is proper circulation in blood and there is no pain which gets developed. So keep doing that. Keep on moving your foot up and down. So it will keep on, expanding and contracting the muscles, and you would get relief of a lot of pain as well. And in case if it is beyond, you can't help it, you take a unscheduled stop. So you need to account for all that in your planning as well, which even I do. So you have your regular stops, you have your top-up stops, you have your stops for eating, you have your time allotted, a half an hour time slot or 20-25 minutes time slot allotted for unscheduled stops. This is having said that nothing unforeseen happens. No bike breaks down. Again, that's the reason we also recommend, dividing your entire tribe into groups. So if you're 10, ride in pairs of 2 or 2 to 3 people. Even but don't, make, groups as much as possible. Because if you're riding in 5 or pairs, a group of 5 each, what will happen is if one person, goes down or there's a problem with someone's bike, the other 4 will end up stopping, So we need to avoid that. So if you have the smaller groups, 2 or 3, 4, at max 5, it would make sense given that not everybody has to stop. So rest all continue. Even with that, you need to be very clear. Please take a call. If something goes wrong with someone, bike is not working, the other guys will move on. Carry the number, save the number of recoveries, speak to a couple of recoveries before you leave for that ride. Ask them different locations if they know someone in that particular location, if they provide service in that location, get their numbers before you save their numbers, and speed dialing, have those numbers with you in your mobile phone. So if something goes wrong, you cannot continue, you have to stop, you have to carry your bike back, you should have those numbers. So just see your location where you are, reach out to the nearest recovery, and that's it. Do not let other guys wait for it. Yeah, obviously, people will stop if you're riding in a group if something goes wrong. But if you're sure you cannot ride, ask the other guys to leave. There's no point wasting time. They can carry on, and you can wait and, wait for the recovery to come. So carry the numbers of the recovery with you so that you can reach out in case of emergency, right? And, carrying that extra medicines, painkillers, bandage and stuff, it's quite helpful. Though we all pray that you don't need that, in any circumstances, but it's always helpful to carry a first aid box in an unforeseen circumstance. So that's, again, a kit which I recommend people to carry. Your rain gear or other gears. It would be very helpful if you guys have, a saddle in your bike so that you can throw all that stuff, because at times during the day it's too warm. You don't want to wear your jacket. You want to just ride in your, your basic t-shirt or your protective gears, and that's it. You can throw back your jacket in the saddle, and in the evening when it's cold, because the temperature difference is huge, especially even in an Indian subcontinent. You might have 42 degrees or 40 degrees or 38 degrees, 35 degrees during the day, and the night would go down to as low as 22 degrees. That's almost 12 to 15 or 16 or 18 degrees variations, and these variations can really make you feel cold. Though in a normal day, it will not impact you as much. You are in, closed environments, you are at home, you are at work, you are in your car, so, it's all get taken care of, and plus you are not tired as well. But the combination of you getting, riding, getting tired, at times even having, cold water because you're thirsty, and then, you enter when you start riding in the evening or in the night time, there is extreme fall in temperature. That's a favorite recipe for someone to become sick. It can, make anyone sick. So these are things you need to take care of, and these all points form under the umbrella of being mentally fit and physically fit. But some of the points also fall under the fitness of your bike. Now, that's the last point left, and couple of more minutes on that. Guys, do not try to do something adventurous with your bike just before you start the ride. So, like I said in the initial part of my video, as long as you're regularly maintaining your bike, you don't have to do any special maintenance just before the ride. Just ride it. That's it. Once you're done, if you hit the service mark, do it. But if you're at a stage where you're due for service for 500 kilometers and you have to ride for 2,500 kilometers, then it makes all the sense for you to service the bike. So don't you can't don't stretch your engine for 2,000 kilometers, which crosses the service limit. So you need to take that call. You need to understand your bike, and then get it serviced. Otherwise, if you are within and not due for service even after the ride, there's nothing to do. Again, do not make any modifications in your bike just before the ride if you're not used to it. Even, for example, if you're changing your tires, you are close to, tires are about to, wear out. You have done almost 25,000 kilometers, 15,000 kilometers. You're looking to change tires. It makes sense to change them before you get into the ride, because, a weaker tire may end up in a disaster. We don't want that to happen. But at the same time, plan it in advance, change your tires and ride for at least 1,000, 2,000 kilometers on them. Do not change the tires a day before you start riding, or you start going on your endurance ride. Don't do that because your tires also need to settle in. Your tire needs to burn out to make yourself comfortable on those new tires. Everything which becomes new on your bike will set you in a different mind frame, which we don't want to happen. So you are riding your bike with the same mindset you start riding your long distance ride. Any new accessory should not, in any way impact your riding pattern, and that's what we don't want. So therefore, avoid doing any kind of modifications or anything just before your endurance ride. It may not behave well, it may not do well. Even for that matter, getting your bike serviced before a ride. The reason I'm saying is that at times, it happens that you end up going back to the service station because something didn't work well even after the service. Over here, we do not have that margin of error. If something was not done properly in that service, do that service in advance. Ride at least 500 kilometers once the service is done, so that your bike is settled. Everything is good, everything is working fine. At times it happens you service and you go back the next day to the garage or to dealership that this is not working fine. Now we don't want that to happen the next day when you're going to do a ride. So plan it out accordingly, and try to settle in your bike with that new thing. If you've added a new accessory, well, it's good. Suppose you have changed your seat, you have added a backrest, but you have never ridden with a backrest until now, and you want to use your backrest for this long distance ride. Try and ride it at least 500,000 kilometers with that backrest, so that you're used to it. You have that perfect setting of your bike. When I'm riding, for almost an hour or two, I sit in this position, and after that, I need my back to go a little back so that I can relax. So have all those things done, tested, and and working fine on your bike, and you are accustomed to those changes in your bike, and only then do it. And that's pretty much about it. It's not a complex thing. I've done it. Hundreds and thousands of other riders have done it. So everybody can do it. It's not an impossible challenge, but yes, it's a tough challenge. It requires you to be mentally fit, physically fit. Your bike needs to be fit. You need to be disciplined. You need to follow a tight schedule. You don't have to be a confrontionist on a ride. It needs to be a synchronized, cohesive group where you guys listen to each other, be a part of the meeting invites which come from the organizer when they're going to discuss the route. It helps a lot. Have the route map, go through it, understand, tune your mind accordingly. Okay, I'm going to ride for first 2 hours and a break, and the break is only for top up. We do not do anything else. Just top up and we ride. Just top up and we ride. So you need to tune yourself. Just go through the map, walk through the map, listen to the planner, and if he or she has organized a catch-up session before the ride, be a part of those discussions so that you can contribute as well, and you can raise your concerns as well if you ask, and they can be addressed. So guys, that's pretty much about it. I hope it was an informative video. I know it's going to be long. I've tried to cover almost everything as much as I can, and I have speaking at the back of my own experience of doing all these rides, and that's what my assessment has been. So as long as you plan, as long as you jot down, as long as you go through the plan, as long as you have that mental fitness meaning you are committed, you are all in, you're giving your 200% for the ride, being physically fit, you understand your riding abilities, you know your stamina, you know it, you take a call only after that. You know your reflexes, how strong they are in the first hour of riding versus the 36th hour of riding. So as long as you're confident about it, only then make that call. And your bike needs to be fit. That's very critical. If your bike is not fit, despite the fact that you are all ready for the ride, the last thing we want is something to go wrong with the bike in the middle of the road. So keep servicing your bike regularly. No need to do any exceptional thing to your bike. If you're adding some accessory, do it at least 500,000 kilometers before the ride. Ride the bike for that much. Get accustomed to that accessory, get accustomed to that change. If you want any modification, you can do that. You can't do anything on the day of the riding. Right, guys? So that's it. Ride safe, plan safe, participate in those endurance rides. It's an extreme proud feeling when you see that patch on your vest or when you see a certificate hanging on your wall. All right, guys, signing off. That's Karan.
Good, man. Yes. So